Hi, welcome to MPower. I'm Donzaleigh Powell with Donzaleigh Incorporated.
I'm Markeith Brayton of Markeith Brayton and Company LLC.
And this episode is episode 2. We're kind of following up on episode 1, giving you a deeper dive into who we are, more about our backgrounds, our thought processes, and some of the things that we do.
Yeah, so I thought that we would do this show for the purposes of introducing ourselves more so that people can go along the journey with us. It's so important to me that we allow people on the inside and to go on this journey. And we want you to go on this journey. We want you to start fresh with us when we first start the show, learn about us, and then take you on the progression, because this show is going somewhere.
It's going to take off.
So as I stated, I'm Markeith Brayton, born and reared. I like to say reared because my mom used to say you raise cows, but you rear children. So born and reared right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Grew up in a single parent home. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, 3 boys and 1 girl. My sister is the youngest. My mom actually had my sister when she was right at 40 years old. And so there's a long, many-year span between me and the youngest. I think it's about 13 years between me and my sister. But grew up in Nashville, went to school and graduated from John Overton High School and went on to college. But one of the things that really was impactful for me in growing up was growing up in a single parent home. My mom actually is a veteran, so she is a military woman, and growing up in her household, you knew.
What branch?
Army woman. And, growing up in her household, she was a nurse at the VA hospital. And she worked at the VA hospital for 40 plus years. She's been retired now for about 5 years. But growing up in a single parent home, being the oldest of 4, really impacted me in a great deal. I think both positively and in negative ways as well, because I had to grow up pretty fast being the oldest, And I always like to say as well that I don't think that I was really a sibling, a brother to my siblings. I was almost more like a parent to some degree because I had to take on certain responsibilities very early. But it impacted me in a great way. One, because I grew up in a way that I knew independence and responsibility very early. Now that can be both positive and negative, but because I had the ability to be able to do for myself, take on certain responsibilities without much support. And I say that for this purpose, that sometimes many of us get caught up in not moving forward because of lack of support. Well, for me, I took that from my childhood to be able to be something that motivated me and inspired me to do. That in spite of support, in spite of people being in my corner, in spite of people having an encouraging word to say, I still was going to do whatever I put my mind to do. And a lot of that stemmed from the fact that I was a basketball player in middle school and my freshman year of high school. And then I ran track all throughout my entire middle school, high school, and up to my sophomore year in college. But some of that independence came from the fact that I knew my mother could not support in a way that she probably would have liked to, because she was always working, making sure that we had a roof over our head, making sure we had food to eat, clothes on our back, right? And so there are a lot of things that I just learned to do on my own in that independent way because of that type of experience. And as I, have grown older and matured, to some degree that has been negative because I don't really expect people to do. I don't really look for people to support. And I'm very independent in the sense that I don't even expect people to help. Right? And so that's just a little bit about me, and I'm sure we'll go in more detail a little bit later on, but I want to give Donzaleigh some time to share.
Yes, well, we were in the same area. I grew up in the Antioch, Tennessee, Nashville area as well. Then kind of moved out just a little bit to the suburbs, but not far at all. And my background, I guess, was pretty somewhat different. I was raised by two parents. I was actually a PK or preacher's kid, and they're still married to this day. So they're getting ready to celebrate their 51st wedding anniversary. So that is the environment that I grew up in. However, you know how life happens, right? So surprise, surprise, hey, preacher's daughter, I ended up pregnant. So I was a teenage mom. Yep, teenage mom. Had my son. My son is now 26. It's kind of so crazy to say that, like to hear those words every time I say it, like 20, he's 26. And I think back to how young and grown, you know, we all thought we were back then. So that's actually one of my ideal target audiences, is kind of in that age group because it's such a pivotal moment. But yeah, so grew up, still had my son and was able to finish high school, went straight through to college. That was, again, some of that support that you're talking about. Literally, it was a given. You're going to college. Like, it really wasn't a lot of conversation about that. And went straight on through. Ended up eventually going back to get my master's. But pretty much that whole journey, I had some learning to do, obviously. Here's a new baby, so go forth and do good. I did have, like I said, I did have support and still was able to go through school, thankfully, with having that. But it was still, it could be rough, you know, so I appreciate and can empathize with whatever your mom did go through, even though I wasn't completely alone because I did have some support, but it's definitely a journey. I think even if whether you're by yourself or even if you have a little bit of support going on too.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us to share our story on the show at the very beginning of the inception of the show, because I think that sometimes people look at you and whatever level of success that you have achieved, and they try to start comparing their lives, which I don't encourage anybody to compare your life to someone else's life. But what's important to me here is that a lot of times we get to see people in their chapter 10, right? You get to see people in their chapter 10 and not really know about 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right. And I think it's important for us to be able to share our lives with you and how we got to this point so that you get to know us a little bit better. And so, Donzaleigh, what a part of your journey really inspires you today that keeps you going?
It's kind of continuous. And I mentioned this in episode 1, but I'm definitely a progressionist. I think once, here's I think what sparked it a little bit for me. So once I did find out that I was pregnant, everything changed. So before, I would go to school, I would skip school, I did what I wanted to do. I'm just going to tell you, like, they would call me to the office all the time. I know people now, if I tell them that, they're like, what? Like, yes, they were saying my name and I didn't want them to. But anyway, until then I had no focus. That brought me to, you know, sometimes you get sat down is what I call it. I had to sit down a little bit, and it really made me say, okay, I do have a choice. I have a choice. So what am I going to do? Am I really going to keep living and doing whatever I want, or am I going to try to get it together? And I started on that road, even though it was a long road and still on the road, but started on that road to getting better. And it just, I don't know. I guess it lit a fire that has just not gone out. And I just continue to seek to, like I said, do better, learn more, and just keep going to the next level.
Yeah. I think for me, it was the not being able to have everything I wanted. Right? Growing up in a single parent home, mom raising 4 kids on her own, there were a lot of things that we just didn't get. Right? Because roof, food, clothes, shoes were the most important things. Now, don't get me wrong, we stayed in a very nice, decent apartment complex. Our apartment was literally right above the pool. and so we would be able to swim during the summer. And my mom did her best to keep us in activities, whether it was sports or Boys and Girls Club, different things like that. We definitely was in church every Sunday as well. But not having everything I wanted was the inspiration for me. And being the oldest, education became very important to me. And so after I finished John Overton, I went to the only HBCU in Kentucky, Kentucky State University, and really excelled in college, And one of those things that I talked about earlier was the independence, that I wanted to go away from home where nobody really knew my name. I did have an uncle, my dad's brother, who was a professor there, but it was an opportunity for me to really find me, to really learn me. Because when I was at home growing up, I did have a feeling, the feeling of not being seen, right? After my siblings came along, that might necessarily be a negative part of being the oldest and being so much older than my siblings. Right. When they started coming along, I think I internalized that, okay, my mom doesn't have enough time for me. She's got to tend to the younger ones, right? And so that kind of birthed, I think, in me, to some degree, not being seen. And so when I went away to college, I was able to really explore more of my gifts, talents. That's when I learned that I really had a passion for speaking and teaching and sharing. I'll never forget a convocation that I attended while in school. I think it was my freshman year. A lady by the name of Patricia McLeod. She was the keynote speaker for the convocation. And she gave such a riveting speech. While I was sitting in those chairs, I said to myself, that's exactly what I want to do with my life. Now, granted, I was in school, I was a biology, chemistry major, wanted to become a doctor. I even went as far as going to graduate school at Meharry Medical College to become a doctor, but I never forgot that moment in that convocation, telling myself, I want to speak like that lady. I want to do what she's doing to inspire lives. And being in college really helped me to explore that about myself, really helped me to connect and align with my ability to speak and to inspire and to motivate and to exhort and to build up people and their mindsets. And so, I think that we can, take the good and the bad from our experiences. There's a story that I heard one time before. My father, who wasn't really that active in my life, he was an alcoholic. And when I think about that, sometimes I think about this story where there are two brothers whose father was an alcoholic, and they both lived in the house with their father. And one brother took the path that was not the best path, and he ended up being in jail. The other brother took the path of going to school, getting his education, matriculating in his career, becoming very successful in his career. And the question was asked to both brothers, what was the most impactful thing in your life that has found you in the place that you are today? And both brothers said it was our father, who was an alcoholic. That one brother took the experience and adopted the behavior of his father. Right. The other brother took the experience and adopted the alternative behavior of his father. So you really never know how life might impact a child or how life might impact you depending on your personality. And I think that's so important to share, because I was the brother who said to myself, and I still don't really drink to this day, that I did not want to be or have that habit like my father. And so the best way I knew not to develop that habit was to really not be a drinker.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that. So again, sort of a reverse of that. So I was the baby girl. I had an older sister, and it was several years between us. I want to say about 7 between us. And I can remember she was, let's say, hard on me. And she, you know, I can remember she basically, she told my parents when I came, take her back. And you talk about not being seen. I feel like I was always seen. Number one, I was always seen because I did not look like the average African-American female. They see me coming, here I was, big, huge red hair. And at that time it was almost orangish red, freckles, you got the eyes. So that people didn't know what was going on. They're just like, and now people dye their hair and add on, you know, it's just amazing to see how it was coming, but it wasn't cool back then, right? But I think that being seen all the time, but being seen and being different when it wasn't cool, just kind of started building up something in me. And I will say, as far as college goes, I knew I needed to go. I could not go to a TSU. I could not have gone to any of those back then because I just was not disciplined enough. I was on my way to having focus, but I wasn't focused enough to handle that. And I knew that. And so I went to Lebanon, off in the country, you know, let me stay out there for the most part. Yes, we did have fun and we kicked it sometimes, but I needed someplace where I was going to sit down and get done what I needed to get done in the amount of time and then walk away with a degree. So I think it's funny to hear your play on how that has happened. And then mine, I think for me, it just kind of helped me keep moving towards that leadership role. I just really wanted to be a leader. And when I look back now, it's so funny. A friend of mine just sent me from our yearbook. She took some snapshots and texted them to me a few weeks ago, where I used to be the president of the African American Student Association back then. I didn't even think about it. At the time, you're just doing what needs to be done. But then here I am, a diversity consultant, like years later, here I am trying to always stand up for people or fill in that gap when I can. And so those things just kind of start to come out, I think, the more you get comfortable with who you are.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good, because when you think about your childhood experience, your adolescent experience, and young adult experience, you do start to pinpoint things that speak to why you're where you are. I think it was Steve Jobs. He says you can only connect the dots looking backwards. Say that again. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. And even for myself, I was in high school the senior class vice president. In college, I was a college ambassador. I was the treasurer of the Student Government Association. I was Mr. KSU in college. Then when I got to graduate school, my peers elected me as the president of the graduate school public health program. And when I think about all of that, I think like, okay, there's something to all of these things. There's something that people see in you that you may not see in yourself. Like you're just being you. You just take for granted of you being you, but there are things that people see. But it also speaks to, and I want to encourage each of you who are listening to us today, it also speaks to the impact that you're supposed to be making in the world. You know, people will always ask around this question of what really is my purpose? Well, what is it that people are pulling on you for? What is it people that are asking you to do often? What is the thing that people lean on you for? That is an opportunity for you to be directed towards your purpose if you're not really familiar. There are three questions I like to share with my clients to really help them to uncover their passion, because I believe identifying your passion really leads to understanding and knowing your purpose. And question number one is, what would you do right now if you knew you could not fail? Question number two is, what do you love doing so much that you do it for free even though you could get paid to do it? And then question number three is, what is it that you love doing so much that when you're doing it, you lose track of time while doing it? And then the bonus question I always ask is, why aren't you doing it?
I love that.
Because this is an opportunity for you to really start to unearth what it is that you need to unearth to move forward in doing the thing that you're called to do. And in the last episode, I shared with you all that, we can have all of the success, material success, and all the things that the world says we should have. But are you really successful if you're not fulfilling the thing that you were created to fulfill?
Absolutely, yes. That makes me think about as far as kind of that growth process. So you talked about how you kind of basically took a journey, and then you're also starting to critique and help people to pull that out, which I think is amazing. And it goes back, like you said, it really does. There's pieces of our journey that we've been on. I have this catchphrase, he saved me to share my story. And one of the reasons that just came to me one day, but when I actually, again, thought about it, went back to connect the dots, when I was that teenage mom, and of course, when you're in high school, you're young, everybody's like, oh, that's going on, but we had a very small little class. We would meet like once a month, and it was me and any other pregnant young ladies that were there at the school. I want to say typically it was only about six to eight of us in there, and a lady would come in and help facilitate and get us to talk. And just that moment, that probably 1 hour that they gave us a month was like, thank you. You walk back outside the door and people will be back to, but for that little bit of time, it's like golden. And I think for me, even after I had graduated from there, I always thought that I want to go back and I want to be able to help people like that. And I'm really big on, don't get me wrong, my parents, they went over everything that should have been gone over. But to me, they might as well have been saying it while I was sitting here like this, because I wasn't listening. I heard them, but I was not listening. And sometimes you can have somebody else that's relatable that can say the exact same thing, but they would have listened. Or if I had had that person, I might have listened. And I want to try my best to be that person, because you just never know.
Yeah. So what would you share with that parent that has that daughter or that son that doesn't seem like they're listening?
It's not connecting. I would say pay attention to, I think you need to do your vetting. Because again, I'm real big on discernment too. So I do feel like if you're able to identify somebody that might be a little bit closer in age, but that's still pretty mature, or, that can either keep an eye on them, maybe have those casual conversations. This doesn't have to be a weird, I want you to meet such and such, and they're going to talk, like, keep it light. You all might go out for lunch as a group first. Maybe the three of us have coffee, laugh and laugh and laugh. And then maybe you step away for a little while and give them just a minute to kind of connect and start to feel more comfortable. So I suggest that, because it can be relationships. It could be events that are really, again, geared towards some of the things that we're talking about on the show, as far as how to push past, what are some of the avenues that you can take, things like that you might not have thought of, or that you've tried and maybe just somebody else can do it.
That's good. That's good. Well, we'd like for you all, hey, do you have any questions that you want to submit? And all you have to do is put your questions in the comments, and we will definitely provide some answers to those questions in future episodes. But we want you to participate as well. Share a little bit about yourself, share a little bit about your background and how it has impacted you and your journey and where you are today. That was the whole purpose of today's episode, was to kind of share a little bit more about ourselves and a little bit more about our journey and how we ended up where we are today. And before we end today's episode, I want to talk a little bit around how we have come to this place in our lives of entrepreneurship. We both had careers, we both had successful careers, and we find ourselves today working for ourselves and creating our own, our life and journey from this day forward. And so talk a little bit about, how did you end up becoming a full-time entrepreneur?
Yes. So once I had my first quote unquote real job, right? Every position that I've taken, or each company, I've progressed. Again, kind of told you that's what I like to do. But literally, even on that first job, I went from just being a hired employee to a lead to the supervisor within, I want to say 6 months. And then, so stayed with them quite a while. And then when I moved on, same thing, of course, for a higher position. And same thing, I went through probably 3 positions with that next company. And then by the time I got to my last corporate job, director, basically running multiple programs, all of my jobs have been doing, again, special projects. I'm not one that wants to sit behind the desk and do the exact same thing every day. Like, that just doesn't work for me. That doesn't fulfill me. I'd be sitting there bored to death, ADD, probably, the whole 9. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm doing all this moving for these other companies. It was just time for me to branch out. And now I do all of those moving parts for myself.
And so talk a little bit more about all the things that you do. Because, one of the things that I always say when I see your posts, I'm like, gosh, Donzaleigh does a whole bunch of stuff. How does she keep up with everything? But yeah, talk to us a little bit about all the different things that you're doing.
Sure. I'm a big planner. I try to plan as much as possible, as far in advance as possible. And I do workshops and things that are geared around your vision, your goals, and accountability, and setting up structure to be able to do quite a bit. I know they say we all have the same 24 hours. Some days it doesn't feel like 24 hours to me, just like I'm sure some days it doesn't feel like it to you. You're just like, I don't have enough time. But with the consulting, again, that's diversity and inclusion, sometimes workforce development. With those, I'm able to book that by appointment. So I can work as a subcontractor, put in RFPs, bids, or whatnot on larger projects. And I do have people that I partner with in order to do those. I've been doing photography, I mentioned before. It's been 13 years now, going on 14. But just now about to have my first brick and mortar, my own little place, studio, woo woo. So excited about that. And then also the hosting. So you talked about it earlier, kind of a little of a socialite, as far as I like people and I like being around people. And so I've hosted various events, whether that was trainings, just events to have fun, big on networking. And that can be networking in a networking setting, as well as just networking with people just as you come and meet them. Really love to do that and love to know who people are and what they do. And all of that has just kind of grown and developed, this kind of morphing. It's like day by day, I'm just like, oh, wow. Yeah, but I think, again, it's that pushing past the fear and then staying consistent. And then once I was able to do that and be okay with the no answers, like, it's okay, just go for it. And that's what I've been doing. And then sometimes I get those yeses that I'm like, yes, I'm so glad I went ahead and asked, even though I was scared to ask.
Yeah, that's good. For me, I spent 10 years in corporate America, working professionally, and no job that I had was I ever fully satisfied. I think I had 4 jobs, 4 different organizations in the span of that 10 years. Yep. Now, I went to school to become a healthcare administrator. Well, at the time, I wanted to be a doctor, but when I finished graduate school, I was like, well, I'll just do the health administration piece, and wanted to be the CEO of a major hospital, so on and so forth. And after about 2 or 3 years working in healthcare, I just wasn't fulfilled. I just was not fulfilled. And so, well, let me try my hand at education. At the time, when I decided to transition into education, they were looking for black male teachers, especially black male teachers in the sciences. And so my undergrad was biology, minor in chemistry. And so I went to MLK to interview first. Principal was like, we'll give you a call back. Thank you for the interview, great interview. The next day I had an interview at Stratford High School. And that day the principal was like, we need you here. Boy, I did not know what I was getting into, right? Especially when I was in high school, Stratford was like one of those schools that you were like, you do not even go to that side of town. But it was very rewarding. It was a lot of hard work, but very rewarding. But there was still something missing, So I ended up going back into healthcare. The last 4 years of my professional career, and ended up getting laid off in 2014. And what's so interesting about that being laid off experience is that nobody from college, from high school, or even from my family ever talked to me about potentially being laid off. That we put so much stock in these jobs that really is not secure. Mm-hmm. That any given day, any given moment, somebody could knock on your office door or meet you at your cubicle and ask you to come to the conference room, and that could be your last day. Well, that was my last day. And fortunately, I had actually been planning for transition. I had hired me a business coach to teach me how to build a coaching business and how to launch and all of that various things. And so I decided that April of 2014 that I was just going to bet on myself and figure out how can I speak full time, get into this coaching business, which was new to me at the time, and really start to leverage the skills that people were leveraging when I was working as a teacher. Even in healthcare, I would always be the one chosen to do all the presentations, to do the trainings. I was a corporate compliance director at my last job, and so I was training the doctors on the new regulations and things like that. And so from that point forward, I had always had this vision that I would love to build my business while in full-time ministry. Well, God worked it out to where I did a stint at Vanderbilt for a year and ended up becoming an intern at the Temple Church, and then ultimately ended up becoming the Minister of Marketing and Communications, which is where I learned all of these skills that I'm leveraging today, because they were wanting to start live streaming services every Sunday and Wednesday. They were wanting to start building their own app and all of these things. And I was able, from 2015 to 2018, when I left being in full-time ministry there, I was able to build an app for them. We were already live streaming well before the pandemic. All those things were in place. We had a newsletter that was going out every week, email marketing, all these things that I leverage today in my own business with clients. And fast forward to today, I have a thriving coaching business. I'm refocusing back on going on college campuses to do more speaking around personal branding and how to build your own brand before you graduate from college. And then most recently during the pandemic, I've been working with nonprofits all around virtual events. And that has been very rewarding financially, as well as just being able to cut my own expertise or learn something, a new skill around live streaming events. I didn't know the pandemic was going to hit, right. But it has been so beneficial. It was the one thing that kept the business afloat because I had that skill. And it started with my fraternity asking me to do it 1 year, and then all of a sudden I had some organizations reach out to me and say, hey, can you help us with this event? And I was able to charge what I wanted to charge, one, because they were already accustomed to paying a premium price to do it at the hotels and to have plated dinners. Well, my price wasn't going to be anywhere close to the hotel, but it was going to be something that was going to be beneficial on both ends. And so today, I'm doing quite a few things with the live streaming, with my podcast, and with my speaking, all to build what I like to call the brand called you. Brand called you. You can't really be, I think, a personal brand business because you have the opportunity to be fluid in the things that you want to do, while at the same time, your audience has a tendency to follow you no matter what it is that you're doing.
That was good. That was good. Wow. Well, congratulations for blossoming out of that. Yeah, I love that.
So once again, we want to thank you for joining us for our episode of the MPower Show. We are always excited to have you be a part of the show. In the comments, share your questions, share your emails, continue to follow us, and remember to like and subscribe. We want to build our subscribership right here on YouTube and all the various platforms. And just know that we are here to encourage you, to motivate you, to help you to move along your journey. We want you to be empowered. We want you to maximize your potential. And we want to end every show with something inspiring. And I think Donzaleigh, you went first last time, so I'll go first today. And I want to leave you with this. I want to leave you with the idea that no matter where you started, it should not speak to or impact where you'll end. All you have to do is never give up, keep trying, keep pressing your way, and you will eventually get to your destination. The only people who really fail are the people who give up and quit and don't keep moving forward. So don't give up, keep moving forward.
Absolutely. I'll say mine is actually something that my dad used to say to us, but now I've seen people talk about it as well. He would say, the boat is not concerned with the waters on the outside. It is more concerned with those from within. And that taught me a huge lesson, because sometimes, again, we're always looking to see what everyone else is doing. This is a personal journey for each of us, really. If you really want to go somewhere and you really want to get the most out of life, again, the money and all that, yeah, that's great, but you're not taking it with you. And even if you leave it to your kids, they might squander it. So let's keep everything kind of in perspective. And so for me, think about yourself, think about wholeness, and we'll definitely, we talked about how some of these episodes will talk about mental health and all of these things that are going on. So sometimes take time, take care of you, and that way you'll be more of a flower for everybody else too.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode. Next episode, we're going to be talking about the power of teamwork. Teamwork is so important. This is why we're collaborating together, and we look forward to sharing the episode with you. But until next time, have a great rest of your week. And just remember this, always shoot for the top, because it's the bottom that's overcrowded. Take care.